Welcome to the sideboard at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Indianapolis, the largest to date. A lot of people, even in this secondary room in which we are sitting. There are a lot of people. I'm here with Andrew Shrout.
Hi.
Winner of a classic recently.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah, last week. Good job. And with this archetype, nonetheless, Prime Speaker Band, which just sort of like debuted on the circuit as it is now.
Yeah.
A lot of people have started to play it, so I guess why don't you start us off just by selling the deck.
Okay. It is basically a mid-range deck that gets to play a full 8 mana guys plus 4 Farseeks, and has the most powerful top end in Standard because you get to play Prime Speaker Zaganas and 5-drop Garriks. So essentially, all the deck does is make enormous monsters and then draw buckets of cards. If those happen to be my 2 favorite things in Magic, so
okay.
If those are yours, yeah, you should check this deck out.
All right, have you made any big changes since the win?
No big ones. I got first. The deck worked okay. Last time, so I didn't want to do anything too drastic. The only changes I've made, the deck that I played in the Classic had Strangleroot Geists. Basically, I just wanted something as like a bridge between like the early game where you're developing your mana and the late game where you're playing giant whammies.
Sure.
Geist is what we came up with, and it was fine, but it was clearly the worst card in the deck. So I basically replaced it with random one-ofs that kind of bridge as well. I replaced it with a Cyclonic Rift, a Syncopate, and an Oblivion Ring.
Okay.
But all this week I was working with several people: Adam Prozac, Christian Valeni, several others.
Sure.
And there were so many ideas thrown around. Like we were going to play like Fiend Hunters at one point. We were going to play Feeling of Dreads at one point. Attendant Knight was actually tried for a while and wasn't bad for what it's worth.
Yeah, the old might be a Blade Splicer, might not be.
It's kind of a Blade Splicer. Yeah, it was fine. But yeah, other than that, like almost all of the spells in the main deck haven't changed. The only other change has been to add some Cavern of Souls to the mana base.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the Caverns before we go back to the one-ofs.
Okay.
Obviously, this deck has a pretty diverse range of creature types. In fact, I don't think any of them share a single one except for Angel and Angel.
Yeah, we got
right?
2 Angels. Yeah.
All right. So, what creature type do you find yourself primarily naming? Is it like the threat you're trying to resolve that turn, or do you keep in mind for the long game what you're going to need?
It's about half and half. It really depends on what other lands you draw. If you need about half the time you need it to be able to cast Angel of Serenity or Prime Speaker Zagana. Like, yeah, whichever one is in your hand that is stuck, you just name that, and that's fine. And then, of course, in matchups where you're having to battle Dissipates and Counterfluxes and whatever else, you have to be conscious of like what you're going to need to force through. And in that case, it is usually either like Merfolk or Angel, whichever is more important.
Right, the 2 top, and Angel obviously being able to chain into multiple Angels over the course of a really long game.
Right, a Cavern on Angel is huge because they can never really get rid of them.
Okay, well, you have narrowed down the strategy for us a little bit. We've obviously got like 12 ramp spells in the Elves and Farseeks and the giant guys. You've got only 2 Garruk Primal Hunters, though. You edged yourself with 1 Garruk Relentless as well. Why the Relentless? I know they're more in the sideboard, so I guess
the Relentless is it's mostly a hedge, but I was a little worried about having too much top end, like having the right balance of like things to do in the mid game to like keep from dying to random aggro decks. Garruk Relentless is good there. It just comes down, eats a guy, and then like kind of buys you some time while they have to attack it. Sometimes making pretty bad attacks to get it off. Also, it's kind of a proxy Garruk Primal Hunter because when you flip it, you can search for Prime Speaker Zagana with it. So if you need to draw a big pile of cards with it, you can. You just have to.
That makes sense.
It's like a backdoor Garruk in that case.
I imagine it's also pretty handy in the mirror, just being able to get down before other Primal Hunters.
I have 2 more on the board for that reason.
Okay. You also have your one-ofs, which we discussed, and I do kind of like this mix. This is as mixes go. Obviously, Cyclonic Rift can answer virtually any situation, but you don't want to draw a bunch of them.
Right.
And has some early game power and some late game power.
It does things in the early game.
It's relevant.
Yeah,
I can power might not be the right word.
Right.
Oblivion Ring, just a standard reasonable removal spell. You can obviously turn to it frequently if you need to, but ideally you're not under that kind of pressure.
Right.
And Syncopate, which is a really kind of screwy card to have to play around to see how this deck.
I don't think many people will be expecting to have to deal with it in game 1. I'm a big fan of just getting people with a random counterspell when they don't expect it.
Sure.
And I don't know how prevalent this deck will be, if how many people noticed it really. I think it's absurdly powerful and more people should be playing it, honestly. But Syncopate is huge in the mirror. Less so once everybody starts playing Caverns, I guess, but yeah, hitting their Prime Speakers or Angels would be big. And but not even in just mid-range mirrors in general. Syncopate is great against like Olivia Voldaren, Thragtusk, things like that. big Rakdos returns. Like there are plenty of big tap out threats, and so there are plenty of good targets for Syncopate.
Well, with Prime Speaker Zagana sort of playing the role of the Sphinx's revelation, as it were, of the deck, obviously you don't really need that card so much.
Right.
But you've also got access to Gavany Township, courtesy of your color combinations. You've made room for 3. So I guess a twofold question, is how often are you winning with Township? And also, what kind of a sacrifice do you think it is to the mana base to play with?
It is not much of a sacrifice.
Okay.
Because literally every other land in the deck, except for the one Hallowed Fountain, makes green mana. So like, we're heavily green with light splashes. So like, it's not keeping us off of our mana guys or our like 4 threats. Like, I guess in theory we would have like more white sources or more blue sources for like the Angels and Prime Speakers, but by the time we get to that point, we've like had time to like fix our mana.
And I imagine a Cavern would be better than like a straight up Hallowed Fountain number 2. Anyway.
Yeah, probably. You want the one fountain to Farseek for, of course.
Right,
but,
of course.
But the Township is a pretty big part of the game plan on its own. This deck has 36 main deck mana sources. It's 24 lands, 8 mana creatures, and 4 Farseeks. We can get away with that because our individual spells at the top end are so powerful that we just have to make sure we get to cast them on time. But the deck can flood, and this is a very good like safety valve against flooding.
Sure, that makes sense.
With the 8 mana guys, and of course with Garrix making beasts and with Ragtusks and Resto Angels, like it's a fine clock on its own, and it keeps you from having to like commit even further to the board once you've like drawn your 7.
I do like how it can make these elves a little bit of a threat. Obviously, it's not like a wolf run where one elf can just be lethal every single time you draw one, but over time it's certainly powerful and it has impact.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on over to your sideboard. You came, as we've already discussed, with the additional Garrix, which are great in the mirror, and additional Syncopates, which are also great in the mirror, but also a card I imagine not a lot of people are going to be expecting just this weekend in general.
Maybe not. Probably not. But we'll see. I don't know. Doesn't matter if they see it coming or not. We'll get them with it.
You've also got Rest in Pieces. You came packing 3 of those. Are you expecting kind of a Reanimator element this week? Or?
I don't know if I'm expecting it so much to come out in big numbers. It's a huge crowd. There are some Reanimator decks here for sure. The Reanimator strategies are some of the only decks that are actually packing as powerful an endgame as I am.
That makes sense.
So I wanted some direct trumps in that matchup.
Oh, well, you definitely got one there. Do you find yourself like, does it make your Angels a little worse when you're moving into that matchup, or are you moving basically onto the Township plan most of the time?
The Angel Serenities?
Yeah.
Half the time, I am using the Angel Serenities to clean out their graveyard.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, in game 1 especially, that's like nearly my only way to interact with, especially the the human Reanimators.
Right.
Like
they're just going to combo kill you.
Exactly.
So you have to do it.
Yeah. But if I can like Serenity out one or two of their pieces, like that slows them down substantially. I mean, the Angel, like in Angel Mirrors, like against like the Junk Reanimator, I don't actually know for sure. I haven't actually played that matchup yet. I haven't run into it. But I feel like we obviously have card advantage at a certain point, and we have mana advantage because we're drawing more cards.
Right, so it's not a big deal if you're not getting that end of your Angel.
Yeah, I think we'll be the first to have enough mana to Angel plus other spells. We'll be the first to have enough mana to double Angel if it comes to that.
Okay.
So,
well, you know, a lot of rounds today. You might get a chance to test all this out.
I know.
And last but not least, we'll discuss the Feeling of Dreads, which I know you already said, considering main decking them. How do you think these cards are performing in the aggro matchups?
In Louisville, I played Centaur Healers, which I was not impressed with those. They gained life, they were nice, but they didn't really block against the aggro decks that people are playing. They're a poor blocker against like a Champion of Parish Open. They're a poor blocker against the Jund aggro decks because they all have 3/3s, and there just really wasn't room. Like I just was not impressed with the card and didn't feel like it had enough impact because it cost 3. And by the time you could cast it, you could be doing other things. The Feeling of Dreads, I think, are gonna like roughly gain me as much life as a Centaur Healer. They basically are gonna fog somewhere between like 4 and 6 life, and then there's a flashback where they can do that again. And it sets me up for like there are a lot of turns where you'll have like a turn 3 where you have 4 mana and you need to like get to your big spells, so you'll have like room for a Farseek and 2 mana left open. So it just like 2 fits the curve so much better than 3 in terms of like when you get a chance to cast a spell to like bridge to the end game against aggro.
Yeah. Okay. I can get behind that. I know that Centaur Healer has been like not the most popular blocker against a lot of decks. I know people were even saying Lockstone Smiter's like better against Mono Red than Centaur Healer.
Smiter's insane. Yeah,
he's so big.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes total sense, and not really surprised to see it here. Obviously, you don't have access to things like Supreme Verdict because you're so dependent on creatures yourself.
I thought about it.
Whoa.
You know, like a lot of these decks will be targeting your mana guys aggressively post board anyway.
Okay.
So if you just like stick one for one turn to like get you to the Wrath on turn 3, so like that just like sets them back off their first two guys, and at that point you're trading spell for spell. And if you get to compare your cards to theirs, you're going to win every time.
And to be totally fair to the Wrath, obviously people won't really expect it coming from the 8-elf.
Yeah. So. People will definitely overextend into it. So.
All right. Well, how have you started off the tournament so far?
I'm 2-0. I've beaten a junk like token sort of deck, and I just beat Aristocrats. Both of those feel like favorable matchups. So.
There you go. I know before this you mentioned to me that you've done very well in this particular T-shirt, this exact T-shirt.
It is. Yes, I play a lot of Magic Online. My Magic Online name is Johnny Hot Sauce, and so the Hot Sauce Games is a store in Chicago that several friends of mine rep these shirts all the time at Star City Opens, and I figured I should get one too, since I give them so much free publicity on Magic Online. So I talked to Joe Bernal. He hooked me up with a free shirt. What up? And I so far have finished. I am mono first place finishes at tournaments while wearing this shirt. So I have a streak that I need to continue.
All right.
So there's a lot of pressure. Today.
Well, have you been wearing it when you moto as well?
Oh no.
Don't want to tempt the
exactly.
juju?
Yeah.
Okay,
Moto's different.
Well, also Johnny Hot Sauce, some of you may know, is the recipient of a Pro Tour invite now.
What up? Yeah.
Courtesy of the change to the mock system. So Andrew, congrats on your joining the Pro Tour.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And good luck in the rest of the tournament. Thanks for joining us.